today's version of Viewpoint. Today's the last day of the year, the 31st of December. And as I stated yesterday, I'm going to have a very popular, very well-known person who is going to have the discussion with me today. And it's going to be a discussion only. We will not do any call-ins. So we're going to chit-chat a bit and just get the views of this person known as Sarah. Sarah Wescot Williams, better known as Sarah, best known as Sarah. And she is a chair lady of Parliament and has been everything else in between her first job and Parliament in government. So, Sarah, welcome to the program today, December 31st.
Thank you, Erno. It's a pleasure to be on the program. As I was saying before we got started, it has been a while, but so it's nice to be on the program today, the last day of the year 2025, and going into hopefully a good 2026. But we'll get to all the good wishes, I guess, later down in the program.
Thanks. 2025.
Yeah.
You have always been known with the politics, etc., and I don't want to get into politics in the sense of the nitty-gritty because we don't have the time to summarize that. What I would like for you to summarize was 364 days ago was January 1st.
Yeah.
And starting from January 1st through now, we had an election in January. Was it in January? When we had
those were in 2024.
2024. We starting from January this year to now. How has it been?
Yeah.
And a lot has happened. And Viewpoint, we've had 1 million people call in and talk about politics, the good things of politics, the bad things of politics, the good things with government and the bad things of government.
Of course.
So, what is your view of 2025 starting from January 1st?
Erno, I think, like you mentioned, the year 2024, right? At the closing of that year, I described 2024 as a very confusing year. And that primarily had to do with the fact that we did have 2 elections in 2024. So with all that went on in terms of the politics surrounding it, how we ended up with a second election in August of 2024. So that was really, I use a nice word. I say, a confusing year, but it was a crazy year. 2024 really, just when we thought we had we had a government been formed, 17 days later, we're talking 2024, because I think that still had like a tail in 2025. So anyhow, they were there for 17 days, and then you had elections again in 2024. I was one of those who was like adamant against another election in the same year for obvious and not so obvious reasons. But anyhow, it took place. The election, the second one in August 2024, took place. The Democratic Party came out better than we did in January 2024 election. So all in all, but still, because a year like 2024 had a lot of stagnation, obviously, because a lot was going on politically, elections, you stopped things, you had a change in government, you had a second government, etc., etc. Then, of course, thank God we got out of that 365 days later, and then we had the 2025. I think you were on point when you stated that a lot of things got started in 2025. A lot of things are still ongoing. Taken place in 2025, and what I would now like to see with all of those things that were started. First, Erno, one of my focus items from the onset, I could say, is electoral reform. Electoral reform, so that you could have a government that, based on the governing program of that government / that coalition, can set out to do the things that they/we promise the people. Because in the past, we have had too many things happening that basically either kept the government at bay from doing things. So maybe the government did not change. And I'm referring to the period 2020, 2024. The government, you didn't have elections during that period, but you did have some political maneuvering that kind of put the government at the time on their toes. So for me, electoral reform. However, when I look at matters like electoral reform, I look at matters like universal health care. I'm very another focus point is that. And but obviously we St.Maarten, we the parliament, cannot get far if we don't close ranks. If we don't close ranks to get things done. And so often
when you say closing ranks in parliament, you mean closing ranks with all of the members of parliament or coalition? Or because again, the members of parliament in 2025 those members have been very vocal and very busy.
True. And I mean starting in parliament. I have been advocating it to my colleagues in parliament, to anyone who wishes to hear, that parliament can take on a much more independent role in terms of having particular items on which we all agree and really pursuing that with a force. And of course, it's politics, it's parties, it's factions. So you're going to have those differences. But still, I believe as parliament, we can raise the bar in terms of getting things done. Because at the end of the day, we cannot single-handedly make things happen, one, and if we don't have an understanding with the government and the government with us, you're not going to see things materializing.
Yeah, but Sarah, I could look at you and the way you handle the management of parliament, that the synchronization in parliament is you're very comfortable, or comfortably enough, because there are times when you are, as chairperson of the parliamentary meetings, you are not the chair, but you're sitting in the room because, of course, you want to have your input, and you can't be in the chair if you want to have input.
Right.
However, you do a lot more than usual chairpersons of parliament, and that could only be done like that, and you could only feel comfortable enough that the rest of parliament is in line, on board with what is happening. Else you would have to be there to chair and keep control. So it's a lot of maturity in parliament,
indeed.
if I can call it that.
Yeah, and I agree. A lot of maturity, and from my perspective, most of the MPs right now, especially the first timers or those who have not been there for a longer period of time, are willing to learn and understand. Willing to learn and understand, and oftentimes come to me, whether opposition or coalition, and I would, if I make a call or take a decision as chairperson, hardly ever would the MPs question it, especially if they're not sure of themselves publicly. But they would come to me and say, Chair Lady, did I just do something wrong? Did I say something wrong? They would actually come and ask that question. So that sense of learning and finding their way exists very, very much with this group here. And I tell it to them as well. I mean, we would travel together. We will consult. We will discuss things. So, but then at the end of the day, once you are in a parliamentary meeting, you're talking to your constituents. So I could understand sometimes, your
position.
Yes. But all in all, and that is why I am also advocating this thing about, let's let Parliament have its own agenda. Let Parliament, for example, single out a matter which every member of Parliament speaks about, which every faction speaks about, the issue of GEBE. And we don't have the time here, Edna, to go into that. But I think that's a topic that a deep dive need to be made into that. A deep dive need to be made into the structure of government-owned companies in general. Right now, and you see, I'm talking a little fast because I realize we don't have that much time. But I know the new year, God's will in 2026, is going to open with a lot of focus on the budget, because we still today talking about amending the budget 2025, and technically it needs to happen, but it is ludicrous to consider that process as a budgetary debate when the year 2025 has already been closed. Yes, changes need to be made in the budget. When do changes need to be made in a budget for you to have a budget amendment? It is when the government either getting more money than they had budgeted for, give out differently than they had budgeted for. So you need to do that kind of a closing statement. But 2025 is not, we are not talking the budget to say, oh, but why you spend it on that? You should have spent it on this. You know, no. So I am, and I have been talking to the ministers in general, you know, don't let's focus on that. Of course, you could get a discussion. Yeah, but you know, you're long over the deadline. All of that is true. All of that is true. The CFT regulations, the accountability ordinance regulations. But if we keep insisting on dealing at length with the budget of, let's say, the year 2025, we're always going to be late with the next budget, which we are already. With 2026, you know, so somewhere we need to be able, and I have been kind of breaking my mind about it, because somewhere we need to.
But is this debate debate on the internal debate on the budget 2025, amending the 2025 budget? Is this hampering the presentation of the 2026 budget? Of course, the 2026 also depends in terms of income and expenditures to a certain degree on what your past expenditures were.
Totally.
But does that mean we stuck with 2026, so we get in 2026 whenever?
Well, yeah. if we let it go as projected, the answer to that question, Edna, is yes. Then we kind of stuck, waiting to finish that one, have all of the numbers, all of the I's dotted and the T's crossed for the, you know, before we deal with 2026. And I'm like, guys, I understand we need to draw a line on the 2025 budget. It's not yet our annual account. That's to come. That's to come. The annual accounts for every year, that's a more intricate, you know, review of government finances over the year and financial management. However, I do believe that we need to try to, as much as possible, close the gap for 2026. Right now, the projection is that somewhere in May, we are going to be dealing with the budget 2026. And that would mean then, because actually in May is when you start to gather the numbers from the ministries and so for 2027. So somewhere we have to bite that bullet, Edna, and say, well, okay, we know we're late. We're going to draw a line on the 2025. The discussion can be brief because there's nothing that can change unless you decide, government, you went way overboard, and then that would be a whole nother process in Parliament. But other than that, let's.
I like. Sorry for cutting you
off.
No,
you
I
go
like
ahead.
how you said. You know, we realize and we're mature enough to say we're going to bite the bullet for 2026. We know we're coming in late because we didn't get 2025 right, and we're going to do that.
Yeah.
Now, I want to change the tone.
Okay.
And I want to talk about St.Maarten. I mean, the politics, you're the best in it. We know it all. People understand it. St.Maarten. A couple of my guests over the last few days, we talked about attitude, we talked about the people and their mental state, the feelings for St.Maarten, and we seem to think a lot of the programs, you hear a lot of discussion on the negative stuff. Garbage collection, the island dirty, not enough things, the problems with the supermarkets, blah, 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 blah. The negative stuff. St.Maarten, we have a great tourism year started. We have a good thing going.
Yeah.
We've been suffering with crime, unnecessary crime. We've been suffering a lot of negative things. The state of St. Maarten, in terms of the mental, the mental state of the people of St. Maarten, how do you think we feel as a country?
Yeah.
What impression you're getting with the new government over the new year? Because I think people ask me, well, how the government running?
Yeah, me too.
And and there are times there are times when I would say, even when I was working, I would say the government is not running. The government is walking. We're not moving forward fast, but we're moving forward. Are we running? Yeah. Are we walking fast? Are we moving forward? I think there's a lot of good things, but you hear a lot of negatives. What do you think? What is your feel for the people of St. Maarten?
This is the way I put the answer to that question, because as coalition, as leaders of the coalition, we discuss this question. We discuss, are the people seeing and understanding what we're doing, how we're doing it, why, the different priorities? And my response is, we need to make sure that there is a plan that people can understand, that we're working towards, so that not everything, there's a lot to be done, but not everything will take place, not even in 2026, but people need to understand, we have a governing program. Okay, how are the steps being taken? What are the priorities from this program? So give people a hope for things to come, and also be very realistic. One of our we have several challenges, let me call them that. One is capacity in government, okay? Capacity, legislative capacity. Another issue is money. Another issue is the funding for our budget. My thing is, we need to have another funding model, another funding thought, because it is not that difficult to come up with a balanced budget, and that's a requirement, and that's another hold back when we're dealing, for example, with 2026, because the Minister of Finance cannot, based on the Constitution and other regulations, present a budget that is not balanced. So it ain't so that we can receive as Parliament a budget that ain't balanced, and then Parliament is going to try to budget it. No, the budget needs to be balanced coming from the government. But when you look at our budget currently, it is more or less the same amount annually that we have been having for the last, I don't know how many years. A little extra millions here, a little extra millions less, but that's what we have been trying to maneuver with. However, the expectations and the things that government is required to do have so grown and are so many more than what we started out with. And
you don't have the budget to support
and that's
the growth.
The thing. So we got the issue of capacity. And even when we get, let's say, a capital budget, we need to be very careful in terms what all could we take on. There was a year when we had a capital budget of over 100 million to do different things on the island, schools, infrastructure, you name it. But we couldn't execute that budget. So there are a couple of things that in 2026 I think we should focus on as a government. One, as I mentioned, a different way of funding matters. When we look at the debt situation of government, we need to. That's the kind of discussion we should be having with our kingdom partners. That debt situation itself. I think that we should kind of decentralize the link between government and the governed, so the people, and give a stronger basis to community organizations, because a lot gets lost between government, who is doing and trying their best within their limitations, and what the people on the road, the people in the street, the people on their jobs are expecting of government.
That answers the question right there. In that how can the people? What are the people feeling, and the benefits that they're getting, or non-benefits, from the operations and the decisions of the government, the ministers and the council of ministers and all that. One thing I want to add, it sounds that like we talk a lot about Parliament being separated from the operations of the ministry, the executive level, but it sounds like Parliament plays this Parliament is playing a bigger role other than their opposition and keeping the ministers on their toes and executing what has to be executed.
You know,
Long time ago, we used to say member of Parliament, members of Parliament. You take a back seat. They report to us. We question them.
Yeah.
But you and the rest of Parliament are on top of things where the government is concerned, and it's visible.
Yeah, thank you for that, Edno. And
after this, we're going to go to a break.
Okay, and it is true. It is true, and I would like, and that's what, as the Chair Lady of Parliament, I have been working on, because the time in between government responding to questions or concerns of members of Parliament, that needs to be shortened. One of the ways of doing that, so if I have, as a member of Parliament, whichever one, a concern that I want the people to know I have that concern, I want to hear from the government, one of the ways of shortening that in between there, so when do we get these answers, is the question hour. It is also for this reason that I am working on a protocol with the government when it comes to answering questions by members of Parliament, coming to meetings, when you're asked as a minister to be in Parliament. So yes, it is true what you observed, but also I think it should be quicker. You know what I'm saying? We can't want a meeting on something that is taking place, whether in GB or whatever, and for different reasons, not only because of the government or the ministers. That ain't going to take place until 2 months later, when there's another issue that you would like to address with the government.
But you also don't want to burden the ministers by having them in Parliament every other day too.
And that needs to be considered as well.
But we have
no, you go ahead.
MP, member, chairperson of Parliament, and Sarah. I need to take a break, and I forgot to tell people that you were only going to be here for the first half an hour. But after that, we're going to have one more question, and then we're going to move on. Let's take a break. Chair Lady of Parliament, leader of the Democratic Party, leader of the country for many, many moons, and still doing a great job at it. And Sarah, we were talking about, I forgot to mention at the beginning of the program that you were going to be here for half an hour because you have to leave by 45 minutes too. So with that, there are a couple questions, a couple points I want to discuss in a straight up procedure like you're doing now, and one is the question hour in Parliament, and the other one is the interruption procedure where a member of Parliament is allowed to interrupt another procedure of Parliament. And I feel slighted because I was a member of Parliament in the Netherlands and Toulouse, and these things didn't exist then.
Yeah, I know.
You couldn't just do that. Yeah. And I speak to Dimar all the time. So you all have all these new rules and stuff like that. We need to understand them. We need to really, really understand them.
I would love the opportunity to do that. And as I mentioned, I just briefly referred to a protocol that I, on behalf of the Parliament, is working out with the government so that the MPs can better represent. And I also want to talk about that protocol. What's in this protocol? How do I anticipate kind of closing that gap? Because I believe there's too much time in between our discussions, but also that our discussions should be more effective in Parliament and getting answers from the government. But
very briefly, that interruption.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, point of interruption.
Yeah.
That person is saying something. The member of Parliament is saying something. I want to add something. I understand it's supposed to be related to the topic. If you want to interrupt, or if it's something you're saying personal against another member of Parliament, how does that work? Because I could interrupt you just in order to mess up your trend of thought.
No, and many people do not realize that actually this matter of interruptions has been in our rules of order from day one. that we can have interruptions. It's a procedure, as many other things in our rules of order, that was taken over from the Dutch Second Chamber Rules of Order, in which they have interruptions. Now, it's not because we took it over or because they have it that we took it, but it also because realize that members of parliament, we are stuck, especially for public meetings, to a certain process. First and second round, you have a time limit, and so. On the other hand, you can have the ministers as well as other members of parliament say all kind of different things that you might not have the opportunity again to respond to. So, and that's why every time I give the opportunity for interruptions, I will mention what are the criteria for interruptions, So, but we are still kind of finding our way a little. But if a minister says something that is like totally, and a member of parliament, but that ain't true, you get up and you respectfully say to the minister, but you know what I'm saying? But again, we're kind of finding our way. You're not allowed.
We could be like a little young child where you push your parents and push the level of the child. So the chair of the meeting then has to
exactly
have that
and that's why I always say, guys, it ain't that let's see how we can like interrupt the minister's train of thought or something like that. No, but again, we kind of molding it in terms of what it should be like.
And going back to the discussion earlier, it shows maturity in parliament because there's a lot of respect for the parliamentarians, both coalition and opposition, when they're speaking, etc., even with interruptions, or that they don't really go at each other the way I've seen in the past. So there's a lot of respect.
It is true, and sometimes the MPs themselves would kind of know, okay, I think I went a little too far there, and then all I would do is, like turn and like, rather than saying, hey, MP, I'm calling you back to order, just look at them and like, and so that,
so you could give them that parental eye.
Yeah, and so that, to the people we don't come across as that's all they're doing there, so.
Well, I must admit to the people that's coming across now that a lot more is being done and discussed intelligently without the negatives associated with. With that can be associated.
And the next opportunity we get, Erno, we're going to talk, because this thing about why you don't go make laws or you stand up there talk, but this making laws, the parliament is, while it is the legislature, we are not legislators. We are co-legislators. And, again, if we don't synchronize with the government and with each other, we're going to get it passed for one, and we're going to get a law.
Sarah, Friday is the first working day of the year, 2026. I am doing the program on Friday. And this is all interesting stuff. You have to leave in the next 3 minutes, and I totally respect that. I want to propose that you look at your calendar right now and tell me you're available on Friday. I want to discuss in more detail the procedures
and the
of
workings?
Parliament, the new procedures. We go back to William Marlin and Rolox and Samuel, and you're doing those things, but there's a lot of new stuff happening.
No, for sure.
And that I myself need to help to understand. Can we have a discussion for the people of St.Maarten on Friday that we delve into more specifics on this? I would love that.
I think we
and I think the people would be more than happy to start off the year with understanding what's going to be happening for 2026, etc.
No, for sure. No, that is possible. I thank you for the opportunity, and let's do that.
Let's do it. Friday.
Thank you so much.
People of St.Maarten, Friday we're going to be discussing more details. To wrap it up for you, Madam Chair, you have the floor for your country right now.
And what an opportunity to be here on this last day of 2025 and afforded the opportunity to wish each and everyone, starting with our country, St.Maarten, all the best for 2026. For some of us, 2025 has been an extremely good year. For others, not that well. I know so many persons have had personal challenges, be it health, financial, or otherwise. And, I pray that 2026 would be a good one for St. Maarten, a good one for the people of St. Maarten. But it's like I just read a quote by the United Nations. We have to do it together. And honestly, we need to we need to portray St. Maarten for what we believe St. Maarten is, and of course there's always reason. We'll always find reason for criticism, and criticism is good, but let us always do it with a mind to improve things for ourselves and for all on St. Maarten. So with that, I want to wish the entire population and the world at large a most happy and blessed 2026 to you and family, to the PGD2 staff and family. All the best. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Leader of Parliament and Leader of Government in the past, Leader of the Democratic Party, Sarah Wescot. We really appreciate you coming in today and accepting my invitation for Friday.
Indeed.
And we will continue the discussion.
Let's take a quick Maarten tonight.
Thank you. And by the way, on behalf of all of us at PGD2, the Wendell Moore programs, and my family, and I can take the liberty of saying on behalf of the people of St. Maarten and the visitors, we wish you also a safe and happy 2025. 2026
and closing of 25. Thank you
closing
so
25.
much.
Yes. So with that, we'll take a short commercial break, and then I'll come back and go back to some discussion while I escort our leader out of the studios.
Thank you.